My name is Jerry Wartsky. I'm 94 years old and survivor of Auschwitz and the death marches. Adolf Hitler invaded Poland when I was 9 years old. He murdered my parents and most of our family. I know more about Hitler than Kamala will ever know in 1,000 lifetimes. For her to accuse President Trump of being like Hitler is the worst thing I've ever heard in my 75 years living in the United States.
Well, good day, everybody. This is Sam Clark from gravityofnews.com. And a little bit of a somber feeling today. I did go and vote. My vote's been cast. I'm not going to be around on the 5th, so I'll be out of town. So I went and did my duty and got my voting done. I do want to talk about a few things here in the news that came out today, mostly centered around the election, what's going on with that. And we both know there was 2 assassination attempts on President Trump. Most of it was brushed under the carpet. And now we have rhetoric coming from what I consider the desperate Democrats, as the polling for Kamala Harris is absolutely horrendous, and she's tanking out pretty bad. Still a close race. Everybody's going to get out and vote. Whatever side you want to vote for is up to you. That's your decision, not mine. I made my decision. But looking at the rhetoric that's going on, and here's Hillary Clinton saying Trump's planned speech at Madison Square Garden is a reenactment of the 1939 Nazi rally. This is despicable. This is not how Americans treat each other. I know both sides have been slinging things for a lot of years, but there's a point where it goes too far. And what I see is the Democrats crossing a line that is enraging people who may believe what they're saying, and act on it, as we've seen twice already. For her to come out and say such things, comparing, here it is, Hillary Clinton comparing the former president's upcoming Madison Square Garden rally, the 1939 pro-Nazi event, is just despicable. You know, she called us despicable back when she was running and lost in the biggest upset that probably we've ever seen in presidential elections. So she told CNN's Caitlin Collins on Thursday that Trump is trying to reenact the 1939 Nazi rally at an iconic venue just 6 months before Germany would invade Poland, sparking World War II. She was echoing sentiments made by former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, who started this after he said Trump met the general definition of a fascist. She urged voters to open their eyes and prevent Trump from being elected for a second time. This is just awful, awful, awful. Trump has never said anything like that or acted like that or even remotely even come close to being like Adolf Hitler. Do these people really know what they're even saying? It's really insane. So there's more of this. So over here on Newsweek, they're fact-checking Donald Trump's comments, and Harris's comments. And we know both sides lie. You know, they do. They exaggerate stuff. But this isn't about lying or exaggerating. This is about what people are saying. And Kamala Harris coming out, calling him a fascist on CNN, and generalizing him to be like Adolf Hitler, has no place in American politics. None. There's nothing that backs that up. Some guy, John Kelly, who got fired he was a former chief of staff, claimed in the Atlantic that former president had said he needed the kind of generals that Adolf Hitler had. We don't know if that's true or not. It hasn't been fact checked, But immediately within 24 hours, Kamala Harris ran a piece and stood there in front of the presidential seal, vice presidential seal, talking to her supporters in a tone that many would interpret that Trump is similar to Hitler. And what that leads to, I don't know, but it's really quite stunning that that could be spoken like that. When you hear from survivors, which I'm going to play in a moment, of somebody who actually was a Holocaust survivor, which there aren't many left, spoke about what she said. It's pretty awful that they would speak like this, especially after 2 assassination attempts, because this is going to rile up people who are nut jobs and crazy people to probably try to assassinate him again. It's setting the stage for it. These are human beings on both sides. There's no place for this kind of rhetoric to be spoken, and people that are in influencing power like she is. She's in a position of power and influence, and it's really horrendous.
It has flipped. The story the country tells itself about reality has flipped. None of the normal people are supporting the Democratic machine. Tim Walz is supporting the Democratic machine. A man you would never allow to babysit your own children. That's the archetype. It's the party of weirdos, of envy, of hate, of resentment, of bitterness, of weakness, of a total lack of creativity. It's a party of conformity. It's a party of the machine, where it doesn't matter who the candidate is because individuals are immaterial. All that matters is the collective. That's the Soviet model. And opposing them is the rest of the country, slowly waking up to the fact that these people have no moral authority whatsoever. They have no legitimacy in a democracy where the government must rule by the consent of the governed. They have no consent. And the way that they've treated this country over the past 4 years is the most shocking thing I've ever seen in 55 years. To allow millions of people, mostly young men with no skills and no English, into our country illegally, and then fly them around at our expense and give them phones and put them on welfare programs that no American citizen can get. It is the most insulting, yeah, boo, but it's worse than boo. That's the biggest crime in the history of the United States of America.
Next up, I want to cover a little bit about what Maricopa County is saying, as you can see from this headline. I thought we live in an age where we can usually, in the past, election results have been released as they come in. Typically, we get the results within hours of polls closing. Well, we know that Arizona is a swing state, and they're already announcing that it's going to take them 10 to 13 days to tabulate the ballots. I don't understand this. I don't ever remember this when I was younger. Back then, they didn't have electronic and digital. We had hand votes, and they somehow still were able to count the votes within a fairly short period. So we're already warning, for some reason, 10 to 13 days. So if the election's too close to call, we're going to be waiting on Arizona, it looks like, as they've already announced. It's going to take them 10 to 13 days to count the vote. Interesting times we live in, folks. This makes no sense to me in a day where, most of it's electronically tabulated as it goes into the box. It counts the votes, but that's the word. Who can vote? U.S. citizens living outside the country can vote. U.S. citizens born abroad and never lived in the United States actually can vote based on where their parents last lived, or if you have dual citizenship, and obviously if you're a U.S. citizen. Meet your state requirements, you're 18 years old, and you're registered to vote, which I just went and did today. I cast my vote today because I will not be home on that day. who cannot vote. Non-citizens, including permanent legal residents, cannot vote. Some people convicted of a felony, that's state by state. Some people who have a mental disability may not be able to vote. But the big one here is non-citizens. And we have a story that has come out in the last few days. Greg Youngkin has gone and looked at the election rolls in his state and has compared them to the Department of Motor Vehicle list of individuals identified as non-citizens. Okay, so we just read under the country's laws that are United States laws that non-citizens aren't allowed to vote. So he went and identified 6,000 people that are non-citizens and removed them from the voter rolls. So the Department of Justice, here we are at justice.gov, sues Virginia for violating federal laws, prohibiting removing people from 90 days of an election. But wait a minute. Isn't the laws that a non-citizen can't vote? So I guess if they can, if it's not done within 90 days of an election. That's pretty odd. That's a conflicting law. I don't necessarily agree with that. The Constitution of the United States from .gov that we just read says, doesn't say within 90 days, it says non-citizens are not allowed to vote. But the Department of Justice is suing Virginia because Youngkin removed 6,000 Virginians that he found through the Department of Motor Vehicles. They're non-citizens. Okay, then, off to another story here. Pennsylvania County finds 2,500 suspected fraudulent voter registrations as state election officials investigate. This happened today, October 25th. A criminal investigation has been launched after thousands of suspected fraudulent voter registrations were discovered in the critical swing state of Pennsylvania. Lancaster County Board of Elections announced Friday that staff members identified 2,500 suspected fraudulent voter applications, which have been dropped off at the election office. Who dropped them off? Who did they vote for? And who did this? 2 other Pennsylvania counties received similar applications, were notified to check into them. It appears to be organized effort at this point. But who's organizing it and who's illegally casting votes already? Most of the applications were dated since August 15th, majority of them from Lancaster County. Individuals listed on the applications informed detectives they could not request the form. They did not request the form. They did not complete the form. They did not verify the signature on the form was theirs. So it's starting already. Okay, that's another one on that. A major union dumps Harris as International Association of Firefighters says no. So they have decided they are not going to endorse her. This is the second major union to come out and say, no, we're not going to support them. Usually unions pretty much go with the Democrats. That's the way it's typically been. But what's happening is many people are starting to understand what this woman's all about. I've watched plenty of interviews from her. She doesn't answer questions. One interview, the Brett Baer interview on Fox, she absolutely, all she could say was Trump, 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 Trump. I think it was like 20 times. And couldn't answer anything on policy, on her decisions, on the immigrants we don't have a confirmed number, but we know at least 11 million, but some people are talking 25 million. Could be more than that. That have been let in, and she was asked about that question. She's just blaming Trump and blaming Congress and said they had a great plan for it and it's Congress's fault. So She's been asked, would she do anything different on The View? She said, from Biden's administration, nope, I can't think of one thing. So people are seeing through what she is. I mean, when she ran for president, she got like 1% or less than 1% when she was a presidential candidate and had to drop out of the race early. So to wrap this up, I want to cover a gentleman by the name of Bill Ackman, because he's a multi-billionaire, very wealthy man who has typically, as he says here, been Democrat in New York City, or New York, and that he has supported financially with Democrats. And but he's supporting Trump this time around. And he gave 33 reasons why. And if you're on the fence and you don't know, you're not sure, I really like you to read this whole thing. I'll put a link in the post. But he described 33 actions I described below are those of the Democratic Party and Biden administration. They're also the actions and the policies that unfortunately our most aggressive adversaries would likely implement if they wanted to destroy America from within. Okay, this is a pretty intelligent man, lifelong, pretty hardcore, somewhat Democrat, who has supported the Democratic Party, and he's stepping away. And he gave 33 reasons. I'm going to go through them kind of quick. Open the border to millions of immigrants who weren't screened. Even Bill Clinton in Georgia recently said, well, Lincoln Riley probably wouldn't have happened if they had vetted the people coming across the border, but they didn't. Dumping them in the communities where they're overwhelming the communities. We all know that. There's no arguing that point. I mean, that's very clear to anybody who lives near any of these cities. They see it firsthand and talk about it a lot. Introduce economic policies and massively increase spending without regard to their impact on inflation. And the consequences on low-income Americans that have had to bear the brunt of inflation and are really suffering today. Withdrawal from Afghanistan, number 3. That was a disaster. Terrible day in American history. And then not even showing respect for the 13 U.S. soldiers and leaving Americans behind, and the 13 soldiers that were killed because of that. And Biden, of course, came out and said, oh, no Americans have, no military has died while I've been in office. And the guy's been lost since the beginning. Introduced thousands of new and unnecessary regulations in light of the existing regulatory regime that interfere with our business ability to compete, restraining development of desperately needed housing, infrastructure, and energy production. Okay, this is all the things that he has seen as a Democrat this administration has done over the past 4 years. Modify the bail system so that violent crimes are released without bail. Theft. Don't look any further than California. They wrote a bill that said, anything under $950, we'll just let you right back out. We're not going to hold you. So what happened? People have been stealing stuff, and many cities are reporting that when they go into Walgreens or something like that, everything's locked up. Destroy our street retailers and communities and promote lawlessness by making shoplifting no longer a criminal offense. This has happened in the last 4 years. Limit and or attempt to limit or ban fracking and LNG so that U.S. energy costs increase substantially. Trump had us energy independent for the first time ever, regardless of your view on climate change. I'm not going to get into that discussion, but we were energy independent and exporting oil and gas. Promote DEI ideologies that awards jobs, awards, and university admissions on the basis of race, sexual identity, and gender criteria, and teach our students and citizens that the world can only be understood as an unfair battle between oppressors and the oppressed. This right here is racist at the core. So the Democrats that are pushing these ideologies are pushing racism flat out. There's no other way to put it. Based on race, sexual identity, gender. That's racism. Educate our elementary children that gender is fluid, teaching little kids, oh, you can be a girl, you can be a boy, you can be whatever you cat, dog, whatever you want to be. This is having a tremendous impact on the mental state of our young kids. This, again, has been led by Democrats. And this is why he's leaving. Encourage and celebrate massive protests and riots. $2 billion in damage in the George Floyd riots, people killed. A federal building in the CHOP zone, if you remember that, in Portland, was overrun and overtaken by the George Floyd Antifa, where they built a fence and walled themselves in. That was federal property, state and federal property. And there was Democrats encouraging this, including Kamala Harris. She says they're not going to stop and they shouldn't stop. Go find the clip. Caused tremendous damage. Encourage and celebrate anti-American, anti-Israel protests and flag burning on campuses. Allow anti-Semitism to explode with no check, no balances. Mandate vaccines that have not been adequately tested, nor have their risk been properly considered compared with potential benefits adjusted for the age and health of the individual. I was completely against what was going on during that time frame on the mandated vaccines. Many people lost their jobs. Many people were forced into taking something they didn't want to take. And it's been pretty much proven out there that there's a lot of side effects from that. Shut down free speech in media and on social media platforms. Don't look any further than to what's happening with Elon Musk right now since he took over X. Brazil has shut down. The EU is thinking of shutting down X because people want to have a voice. That's free speech, whether you agree with me or not. We're supposed to be allowed to speak our mind. Use the U.S. state and local legal systems to attack and attempt to jail, take off the campaign trail, or massively fine candidates for the presidency. Well, we've been seeing Trump be attacked for 8 years straight. Seek to defund the police and promote anti-police rhetoric, causing loss of confidence in those who are charged with protecting us. Number 16. Use government funds to subsidize auto companies and internet providers with vastly more expensive data and low-quality technology, when greatly superior and cheaper alternatives are available from companies that are owned and are managed by individuals not favored by the current administration. Favoritism, not based on merit, not based on the content of your character, but based on favoritism. Mandate and legislation, otherwise government solution problems when the private sector can do a vastly better, faster, and cheaper job. Seek to ban gas-powered cars and stoves without regard to the economic and practical impact of doing that. Take no serious action when 45 American citizens are killed by terrorists and 12 are taken hostage. That is still unresolved. And I haven't heard really much out of Biden or Harris on that subject matter at all. Hold back armaments and weaponry from our most important allies. That's been threatened over and over. Eliminate sanctions on one of the most dangerous enemies, enabling them to generate $150 billion of cash reserves from oil sales. Okay, Trump was tough on Iran. That all got eliminated when the Biden-Harris administration came in. They backtracked all that. And basically they supported and paid for what happened on October 7th through the funding of Iran, which funds the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah, and some in Syria. All four of those are trained and funded by Iran, which we gave them the money to do it. Good move. I'm going to let you go through the rest of that. This is a big one. Lie to the American people about the cognitive health of the president. Okay, there was a lot of us that saw this early on based on Biden's behavior. Even his documents they found, his classified documents they found in his Delaware home, they deemed him unfit. So they stopped pursuing that case because the person who was pursuing that case, along with doctors, deemed Biden unfit to be held in court. But yet he's still the president. this goes on. I'm going to let you finish up this, and I'll put a link to all these. You can read all 33 of them.